This is Presspit with Laura Allen.
Hello and welcome to the programme. For the next 60 minutes we'll be looking at the stories making the pages in our local newspapers. We'll be looking at the biggest Cardiff stories in depth, see what's making the nationals, and granted access to Presspit today are Dave Evans from Shoot from the Hip Productions and Gareth Jones from Wealth Ice. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Now to kick things off, let's take a look at Cardiff's news so far this week in 90 seconds. A rare event in space as scientists and researchers watch the planet Mercury cross the sun. It only happens 13 times a century.
It shows that the skies are changing, the skies are dynamic, and you never know, it might spike someone's interest. And maybe one of the things to do is then in a few months' time, Mercury will back in the evening skies. Go and see Mercury in the twilight sky as well.
Paving the way for Cardiff's future, plans for the metro are well underway and we'll see a whole new transport system in the capital. The Heath Hospital experiments with new technology usually seen in Formula One pit stops to help in the resuscitation of newborn babies.
There's a lot of areas where there's a lot of similarities and ways that we could hopefully impart some of our strategic planning, our training techniques and analysis, and look at that from a neonatal resus perspective.
A local arts centre receives record numbers of clothing donations.
Over the last 4 years, we've realised that we've gathered something like 3 tonnes worth of clothing, so that's something like 450 bagfuls.
And it's a clean sweep for Labour as they take all 4 seats in the Welsh Assembly elections. So those are just some of the stories we've covered so far this week. Now first on the agenda, kicking us off today, we've got a lot still bubbling on from the elections there, and a big outrage it seems at the minute. On the front of the Western Mail there we've got some complaints from Nigel Farage at the hiring of Hamilton over Gill.
This may be the first time ever, but I agree with Nigel Farage. I do think it's absolutely outrageous. Whatever your opinion of UKIP, what they stand for, Nathan Gill has been, has led the party for a number of years. He surely deserved a chance to have his voice heard as leader in the Assembly, and this, I just think it's outrageous. And plus, in a week that we've heard the Prime Minister complaining about corruption in other countries, we have someone re-entering political life who's a prime example of a corrupt politician.
Quite a divisive figure,
yeah.
I think it shows you the class in the party, doesn't it? The level of loyalty that they're willing to get rid of Nathan Gill after his years of hard work. But the worst thing about this is we're right now in a realistic situation where Neil Hamilton could be a member of our cabinet this time next week.
Yeah. And there's more in the Western Mail there as well, isn't there? A further couple of pages in with, shows the Lib Dems as well, suggesting they need changes with their name. I mean, there just seems to be outrage across the board.
Yeah, the problem is, I think that as the members of the public don't really know which way to look.
Yeah.
These are the people who should be the pillars in our community, pillars in society, and they're not really doing themselves any justice.
Yeah, I think there's another point as well about the complexity of the electoral system, because I cannot believe that people in Wales, UKIP supporters in Wales, voted for Neil Hamilton. I cannot believe it. I'm sure that they voted for the policies of the party, but I don't think they realised what the electoral system was going to produce. I just think it's shameful.
Hamilton was on a list. They didn't necessarily vote for him there, but there's the confusion, like you said. I mean, here in Wales, they had 3 different votes on the same day. We had the Police Crime Commissioner, the local one, and the Minister one, the AM one. I mean, they'd spent hours trying to separate all of these out. I mean, there's going to be confusion along the way, surely.
But when you look at the turnout for previous Police and Crime Commissioner elections, there had to be a way to make it more efficient. Yeah. And it gives us a bit of a richness in our Assembly, where more parties get a chance to, because of the way that our nation is built up and loyalties, to get a chance to be in the Assembly.
And especially today, we've had a bit more shocking news, a bit of a standoff between Labour and the rest of the parties, because in the First Minister elections, it seemed like Labour was a shoo-in. Carwyn Jones seemed like the obvious choice, but all of the opposition seemed to have gathered together to select Leanne Wood to kind of put her forward for the option.
I think it's gesture politics. I can't see there is any way that Leanne Wood could enter into a partnership with either the Welsh Conservatives or with UKIP. So You know, I don't know what's going on really.
The only one who's come out of this looking good, I think, is Kirsty Williams. I think if Kirsty Williams had been swayed the other way just to make a statement, and I think that's really what today's been about, is making a statement to say the power isn't entirely with Labour.
Well, it ended 29 votes all as well. That was the biggest thing, and like you said, Kirsty Williams was the one that seemed to really make the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Cameron Jones was kind of preparing to go it alone and try and sort of govern with a minority party, and he may choose to do that. But it seems logical to me. They've done it before. That Plaid and Labour at some point will come to some kind of agreement, because that seems a natural partnership.
And would it have been different if David Melding had been the presiding officer?
Yeah, and I mean the thing is now they're saying that if no decision's made in soon, there might be another election. I mean, are people going to vote?
Everyone's got their eye on another small election coming up in the next couple of months, haven't they?
Yeah.
I don't think people would really get out again for another Assembly election, especially when parties like UKIP are gaining ground because people are so annoyed.
And I think the politicians lose credibility, and by losing credibility, people lose confidence in the electoral system, and then we're back to low turnouts, lack of political engagement. And that's kind of where we're heading.
Well,
you know,
I hate to put a stop to the politics there, guys. We could talk all evening about this, but we're moving on now to the South Wales Echo, page 5, which you've got in front of you there. So staff at the University Hospital of Wales are looking into the techniques of Formula 1 pit stops in the resuscitation of newborn babies. So they reckon the teamwork and the sheer efficiency of pit stop work, like with Formula 1 with the Williams team, it's that's the way to kind of move that into the health board now.
I think this is a great idea. I think this is wonderful. I think there's something beautiful that comes from learning about two different disciplines which at first don't seem aligned, but then you realise the way that there's no better team when it comes to running an efficient programme like a pit team in Formula 1. And I think we could all learn so much from spending time with those teams. And it's the impact of the research then of the university to be able to save lives.
Yeah. Kind of agree, but I'm a little bit confused by the story or the way that it's been reported, because I would have thought that if you wanted to learn about resuscitation, there's no one better to go to than the team of the Heath, because they are dealing with this on a minute by minute basis. Whereas, how many people have the Formula 1 team resuscitated in the last year or two?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of confused at that aspect of it, but skill sharing and knowledge. If I wanted to know how to change a tyre, I think it's a great idea. Not so sure about the resuscitation. However, if processes.
But I think the other thing on that is, if we were to run our institutions like the NHS like a sports team,
maybe we'd get some.
Well, if we had the same funding as a sports team,
let's start taking advertising.
Moving on now to a law student story, which is the Daily Express, page 13. So this is in Anne Widdecombe's section, so always a comment there. But they're in the University of Oxford, they're basically giving their law students the option to leave or not take part in cases and lectures which involve maybe rape or sexual abuse cases, or something that may be a bit gruesome or a bit kind of offensive perhaps. Now, what do we think of this?
I think there's an element of kind of reportage here that is spun a story about that seems to be quite legitimate about students, universities having a duty of care over their students, and maybe giving a warning to those students that might be offended by it, may have mental health issues, giving them some sort of warning. Yeah. However, there is kind of like another issue there, which is, I suppose, is about the culture of censorship and offence. And I think when it creeps into other subjects where lecturers are having to censor kind of the passages from from literature or films or whatever,
but I think
then it becomes problematic.
If you've got an aspiration to get into commercial law, and this isn't going to give you any more understanding of the legal system as a result of it, I think for people where there's a cultural reason or there's a sensitivity that would really not, you don't know what people have been through before they get to that point in life. So to go through that could be pretty horrendous. So I think that there's a case for this. I think absolutely Anne Widdecombe probably isn't the person I'd call it for a chat about if I was asking for advice on whether this is a good idea.
I mean, there's always an argument, isn't there, that we're wrapping students in cotton wool. I mean, if I started my job and said, I don't fancy doing those stories because they're too horrible or too gruesome, I don't want to know about that, at what point do we stop this?
I think some people are fascinated by it. Some people are fascinated because of the way that in the media through, Hinterland, the way that it's covered. People are fascinated by the CSI style approach to the legal system. I think there will always be people who are interested in that. It's the ones who aren't, I think, are the ones who...
I think there's a wider issue about how we deal with students and how we protect them from life, I suppose. But I think Anne Whittaker's maybe not the person
to ask. Well, thank you very much there, guys. I'll have to wrap it up there for now. We'll have more from the press bit and my two guests in a few minutes' time. Welcome back to the press. With me tonight are Dave Evans from Shoot From Hit Productions and Gareth Jones from Welsh Ice. Welcome back, guys. Now, hitting the news in Cardiff this week was the issue of extremism. A teacher from a local school spoke in a Mail on Sunday article that Fitzalan High School is a breeding ground for religious extremism. The majority of students there are Muslim, and he said the pupils at the school even tried to convert him. The teacher starts his article by asking how British-born teenagers educated in British schools from British towns and cities are able to be drawn into international jihad and Islamic State. He said that in his 3 years working here at Fitzalan High School, he witnessed radicalisation under his nose. He then said that when he reported it to senior staff, nothing was done about it. The teacher claims in the newspaper that at the school, girls felt bullied into wearing the hijab, many boys wore traditional robes, and teenagers were told not to listen to Western pop music. He says radical Islam is the dominant culture, as 70% of the students are Muslim, and the most strident and aggressive pupils set the tone. The article points out that former student Rayad Khan was radicalised and joined IS and was later killed by an RAF drone strike. Another former pupil, Kaleem Brecker, was sent to prison at the Old Bailey for helping fellow fundamentalists join IS in Syria. The teacher claims that in his time at Fitzalan High School, when he brought up the Charlie Hebdo massacre in Paris or the murder of Lee Rigby in London, it was clear that the pupils saw the perpetrators as heroes and the victims as villains who deserved to be killed. The teacher says a small group of pupils even tried to convert him to Islam. In response, Cardiff Council say that Fitzalan is a very popular high school serving a diverse community. It says staff at the school are fully trained in how to identify the early signs of extremism. They know how to respond and how to get help, guidance and intervention. They say that when concerns arise, the school is quick to respond. So, I mean, a huge topic there, definitely hitting enough of the papers lately. I mean, what do we think about this? It's a local issue in Cardiff.
Well, I think that, it's a big leap for the teacher to talk about, someone trying to convert him and then to go into, political extremism. I mean, a lot of people over the years have tried to convert me to many things, but it doesn't make them terrorists or extremists. But I think if there are problems within the school, it would be good to know what is the school doing about it. And I think it's something that we all need to get involved in. It's not just a particular school or a particular area of the city. It's about being able to counter those kind of extremist views, when we meet people who we think hold those views. And
I think that comes from feeling like there's not an alignment with the views of the UK. It's such a complicated topic. The idea that he was being converted to Islam doesn't mean that he's being converted to becoming an extremist.
And
I think
with this,
there's a radical view there's a radicalism within the way that stories like this are reported that's almost as bad as
And okay, so now we could talk for a long time about that one, but we're moving on now to the metro plans for Cardiff, which is the South Wales Echo, page 14's in front of you there, Dave. So, I mean, the Metro talks about this for a very long time. We've had the City deal, which has pumped so much money into this. I mean, what are our thoughts on the Metro?
It's a great idea. It has to come. It'd be fantastic for the city. The problem I've got with it at the moment, I see these amazing kind of designs of maps with these lines that look like sort of the London Underground ground map. But the purple line that goes from Mountain Ash to Merthyr is like a 12-seater minibus going every 3 hours and not at all on a Sunday. So, if the Metro's going to go ahead, it has to be real and it has to be valid and it has to kind of it has to work, I think, rather than just being lines on a map.
And it has to be something which lasts the next, 50 years or so. We're talking about a generation or an era now where we're coming into automated vehicles. How much of a difference will that make to the way that we get about the region?
Yeah, the metro plans have been in place, in the works for 30 odd years now, haven't they?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to think that now they've got to be perfect, more or less.
I think it's a no-brainer, and for Mark's credit, he's put so much of his life into making this happen.
Yeah.
I think he's had to really battle to get this on the table, and I think that's got to be applauded for everyone in the region. But you're absolutely right, it has to be for people to move around the region, not just everyone pouring into Cardiff.
And I just hope it happens soon. This conversation's been going on, as you say, for years and years and years and years, and the worry is if it goes on much longer, the cost goes up, and also the plans become outdated because life moves on. But yeah, excited if they can pull it off, and it looks as if it's
it looks
happen.
lovely, doesn't it? And we've got to give a credit to your team there for helping make the graphic there as well.
Yeah, so Bomper Studio at ICE did all the video work. It looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Check it out.
And so now moving on to a bit of a lighter story. I've got in front of me here, which is the Sun, and it's page 11. So this is about TV binging. Obviously, I mean, have you both got Netflix? You enjoy a good box set.
Yes.
So this is a scientific study that said that the reason we binge is because after we've got a couple of seasons in or TV episodes in, we lose our ability to choose at this point. This is something that people have decided to put money in and invest in. Apparently, I mean, do you enjoy a good TV binge?
Well,
after you.
It's a force of habit, isn't it? And I think they're absolutely right about that idea around there's evidence that for a lot of people, you end up coming out of that binge feeling quite depressed because there's been no engagement. You've been
Social
absolutely kind of blasted. And I think that's something which we're a generation now where we're much more interested in experiences, and you can get the kind of emotional side of it, but you can never really kind of fully
who has time to binge? I can't remember the last time I had 2 straight hours. I mean, I must have been the last person on earth to watch kind of Breaking Bad in real time.
I haven't seen it.
So I'm probably not the best person to talk. I really don't understand how people can have the time to binge. I'd like to try it one day. Maybe I need to invite some friends around, a couple of bottles of wine.
Maybe that's the social aspect. Bring some friends over rather than sit on your own.
But I think I know people who do that, and I can see it. It's kind of interesting that in some ways it's supplanted cinema in some people's lives. That idea of binging, you have like a whole evening watching whatever it is, but I struggle. I haven't got time to binge.
Well, sorry to cut you short on that one, guys. We're moving on to Art Forger now, which is in the Daily Express, page 25. Has one of you got that one in front? That's what you've got it in front of you there, Dave. So this is an art forger who went to prison because he was forging famous paintings, Rossettis, things like this, and then now he's come out and he's on the straight and narrow, and he makes more money from doing the real stuff, from going down the straight and narrow.
It's a brilliant story, and I think there's something really interesting here about how someone who's kind of been a criminal, he's gone to prison, and actually he's realised that he's got these transferable skills. And he's actually come out a reformed character.
Yeah, there's a quote in there that says it was the best thing that happened to him going to prison.
I think there's a lot of criminals are actually incredible entrepreneurs. They just don't know how to channel their energy. And I think this was a really interesting example of it, where when he tried to channel it again, he ended up doing it illegally, but it's worked out okay. It's almost like Catch Me If You Can style.
Yeah, it's got. I know someone in Cardiff who's kind of working with ex-offenders, getting them back into work, and he's getting them to recognise that they've got these incredible skills that could give them an edge in the job market. It's just trying to realise it and change your mindset. I mean, I think that's what it's all about. And this is someone who's obviously, he's changed his mind, he's turned his life around. Really great positive story about the penal system and reform, I think.
And so front page of the Mirror now, moving on very quickly, we're powering through them tonight. We've got Cliff Richard now in the latest, in the potential sex abuse file. I mean, he's been waiting such a long time to find now. I mean, obviously it's a very serious allegation, but should stars or anybody have to wait this long to know? What
I feel uncomfortable about with this is the leaking of information about trials and accusations to the press, because it's not even saying that he could be, he could face trial. He might as well, his reputation is irrevocably damaged.
Of course.
We live in an era now, especially this campaign in particular, it's been guilt until proven innocent. and unfortunately, a lot of them have been proven guilty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which means that a lot of people go into this expecting, Sir Cliff Richard, as he is now, to be guilty.
Yeah, as far as the press are concerned, it's open hunting season now on Cliff Richard. So I don't think this story at this point is about whether he is guilty or not. That's for a court to decide. It's not for the press to decide. But I'm just appalled because after Levinson, this is clear evidence that the police are still, and even possibly the CPS, which is really disturbing, are using newspapers in the way that American lawyers and prosecutors use it, and that shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't be happening. It just should not be happening.
Obviously, talking about being in the press, in the public eye, now they're making a dramatisation about this kind of thing. Robbie Coltrane and Julie Walters, it's in the Mirror, page 16 there. I'm not sure who's that one there. Yeah, page 16. So it's Robbie Coltrane and Julie Walters who are in this drama, which is supposed to be about Operation Yewtree. Coltrane plays a comedian about it as well. So is this the way forward to help people understand it, or is this almost trivializing it?
It's captured everyone's imagination. I think everyone, there was a time a couple of years ago where it was, as soon as someone's name was trending on Twitter, it was either are they implicated or have they died, and it's that idea where it became so ingrained into everyday culture. I think it's inevitable now. People make that dramatic shows about someone opening a pack of crisps.
Yeah. I don't think there's any topic that's off limits. You look at the foreign language Oscar winner, Son of Saul, that takes you into Auschwitz. These things are the staple of drama.
Well, thanks very much there, guys. Great topics there. We're taking a quick break now, but there's going to be more from local and national papers in a few minutes' time.
Tell the ballroom.
Hi and welcome back to Press Bit. With me tonight are Dave Evans from Shoot from the Hip Productions and Gareth Jones from Welsh Ice. Welcome back, guys. Each week we take a look at what's been making the news here in Cardiff. So time now to look back at our front pages from our local newspapers today. Starting with the Western Mail, they focused on head coach of Wales, Warren Gatland, who's spoken about his choice to get more experience in his team, and election outrage, as we spoke about earlier, with Farage supposedly appalled by Hamilton's appointment, which we mentioned earlier. Now, the South Wales Echo has gone with a family's anguish on the front page of their paper, as one of their relatives has been captured in Iran. Now, the Argus has focused on the circus mishap, which saw an audience member was knocked out by one of the clowns in the middle of an act. Now, I mean, how does this happen? It's on the front page of the Argus there. I mean, this is crazy, surely.
I can't imagine the planning when they were all working out what the show would be like, and they said, do you know what would be a great idea? We'll get someone from the audience and we'll try and flip them upside down. But the worst bit was they weren't trained to actually deal with the situation. If he had broken his neck, the way they carried him could have been it.
And that's what he said in the after the video was released. He said, I was very lucky, I could have been paralysed. He said he doesn't blame the clown, but I mean, this is dangerous.
Oh, who was to blame then?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, maybe they should have had someone at the Formula 1 pit stop doing health and safety, but obviously not. Strange story. I have to say, I've seen some pretty terrible accidents in circuses, which is kind of the reason why you go.
It's like more fascination, isn't
last bastion of
not
anti-health and safety.
As a spectator, you don't expect to be part of that risk.
Oh, a little bit of risk when you're going in, something going wrong, adds a little bit of a frisson to the occasion.
Clowns are scary enough as it is, isn't it?
Okay
Let alone with the chance to paralyse you.
I think that's going to put clowns right back to the top of that.
I think what's really interesting about the story as well, that he doesn't hold any malice towards the clown. Because it could have been a story where the clown was being dragged through the courts and sued. So, all credit to Ben Garner from Kevin Forrest, really, because things do go wrong.
And, of course they do.
And circuses are inherently dangerous places.
But it's that professionalism, I think. If you're going to take that risk, you've got to be prepared. You've got to have someone first aid trained who, if someone's had a neck injury, you don't carry them off like
I love this quote. He said, this is Mr. Garner. He says, the clown said, push against the back of my legs. And that was the last thing I really remember.
That's the thing, isn't it? You don't expect this. These are supposed to be the professionals, aren't they?
Well,
he said, I didn't expect it.
They're acting like clowns.
I didn't expect it to actually do it.
It was his first visit to the circus as well.
And possibly his last.
But if a clown called you out of a crowd, would you go?
I'd probably
I'm
take
not
a
sure
call
I
on my
would.
phone.
I think of it. Oh, sorry, I'm busy.
Oh no, I used to love it as a kid, getting called out by clowns and kind of music hall
Forgetting the rest of the evening.
I would definitely pay ticket to go and see the next performance.
Maybe they'll sell out next time.
Yeah, well, close to home as well.
What circus?
We don't know what circus act it was during as well. It just looks like wrestling to me, but presumably it was something to do with that. But yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, a great story about cutting the trend against health and safety. To be applauded, maybe a little bit, but
like you said, maybe if they'd focus on the pit stops, we might have been okay.
Yeah, you might be okay.
Moving on now to something a little bit more serious, I suppose. In the Daily Mail back page, which you've got in front of you there, haven't you? This is the Man United vandalism. They were late to their game because the coach they were on was vandalised. I mean, this is surely another classic of football hooliganism. This isn't something we see in rugby, is it?
I don't think it's fair to compare with rugby. Yeah. I think this doesn't happen in football nowadays. I think West Ham and Millwall seem to be the only ones who ever get implicated in these kind of activities. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's from a different generation. It shouldn't be seen in what is now a family entertainment sport.
I think it was quite a special occasion because it was the last game at Upton Park, and I think a lot of the old firms kind of appeared out of nowhere and were determined to celebrate in a way that only they know how. So I don't think it's kind of typical of West Ham or other clubs. I think it's very much a one-off, and it's about kind of celebrating a particularly unsavoury reputation that West Ham used to have. So these old faces coming out. I take issue with the rugby one. I'm quite disappointed with the way that rugby crowds have descended into kind of boorishness and kind of just a bit drunkenness, and you do see trouble occurring. It's just not organised.
If you look further in as well, we see more and more of it. I think the Mail have covered quite a lot of it there on a couple of pages. I mean, like you said, this is something we haven't seen for years. Is it surely 70s, 80s? This was when we saw that then. Is it still a problem now?
I don't think it's. I think you can go to any. I've been to some pretty feisty derbies like Forest Derby and things like that, and it is part of the adrenaline. It's the same as going to a circus and expecting to be dragged out and have your neck broken. It's that same kind of excitement, I suppose. But you know that it's not going to go too far. I think. What's happened here is gone way too far.
I think once you get a few of these old faces kind of appearing in the crowds behave in very unpredictable ways. People are not necessarily in control of what they're doing because the mob, there's like this spirit takes over. So I'm sure that a lot of people looking at these photos and just are absolutely horrified by what they actually did.
Well, there was players in the crowds are cowering in the aisles as well because they were trying to get away from the attacks.
Well, I think you can see from the pictures here, people are throwing cans and it's not going to do major damage, but obviously it's gone a little bit too far by one or two of them. Which, but the thing for me that really didn't sit well was that I can't remember if it was Sullivan or Gold said, "Well, no, that didn't happen," and like it's completely unusual for something like this to happen. Outside the stadium.
You think it's more common than when we think, or is this just a rare?
Oh, this is a rarity. No, this is not how it is. No, but I think there are very specific, particular reasons why this happened last night, which aren't really applicable to kind of football as a whole now.
Mm-hmm. You think that's kind of where it's left now? Yeah,
and I think rugby has a different problem now, which is about excessive alcohol use and just the antisocial behaviour that goes with it. It's certainly not. I don't enjoy international days in the same way, and I like a pint or two. But I think there's definitely an element of kind of antisocial behaviour crept in. Very disappointing in a couple of the World Cup games. Seeing people just behaving in a really, really bad way,
And it's supposed to be sportsmanship, isn't it? I suppose.
But people get caught up in the emotion of the occasion, especially during the World Cup. It was one of those opportunities, and the same with Six Nations. I think it brings out a different audience to what you'd get if you were at a match every other weekend.
And I mean, is it the drink that causes a problem? I mean, they've talked about people coming in on trains absolutely slaughtered before the game even starts. Like, I mean, is that where the problem starts?
With rugby, it is. I don't think it necessarily
so much applies with football.
This particular incident last night. Obviously,
this was just
It helps sometimes, but I think with rugby there's definitely a problem with that.
But maybe that's how they've solved it. I mean, you see like Newcastle and Sunderland, when they're playing, they play at 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
You know.
Maybe that's the way forward, yeah. Well, moving on now to this story at the front page of The Guardian here, which is saying that a watchdog has found that the NHS is discharging their elderly patients too early, and that they've had instances of them dying alone at home too soon because they've been kind of kicked out too soon.
Well, my experience is absolutely the opposite. Is that you know, members of my family have gone in recently, and it's been really difficult to get them out because they're so concerned with having a care plan in, and that's to their credit. Frustrating for us sometimes because, you know, particularly my mother-in-law went in a few months ago with a bang on the head, and she was there for about 4 or 5 weeks. But it comes from a position of kind of wanted to have the best care available for those people when they're going out. So I don't know if this is particular to anywhere, but certainly that's not my experience of the NHS in Wales.
I think as well, I've spoken to people who work in an operational side of the NHS. They're under so much pressure. They've got to. It's not about care anymore. It's about turning people around.
Well, we've had all the doctors' strikes and everything now. I mean, there's a big thing about empty beds. They need the beds. There are too many people as it is. I mean, are they really at fault for getting people out too early if they're hoping that they're okay? If
you're looking at, and going back to the thing about the Formula One again, actually, if you're looking at how you can manage those processes in a better way, so trying to apply almost a sales-like approach to, right, we know that we've got to have 85% occupancy at such and such time, and you've got your KPIs all laid out in front of you. You're not actually looking at, in this instance, and it might just be anecdotal, but in this instance, someone whose life is put at risk because of a chart which says they can't be sat in that bed tonight. And if you're making decisions based on that data, then that's not the way we want our NHS to go.
I mean, is this a case of just throwing money at the problem, or is this something that's like core to the NHS? Is this a core problem?
Well, this is why we need our assembly to be focused on these problems and not crying about who's the First Minister. This is another day wasted to be, spent talking about the steel crisis or talking about issues of this. Looks like it's an English
it's NHS
case.
Involved.
Yeah, of course.
But it's not isolated.
That's an interesting point. Is this a particularly English problem, or is this also a problem in Wales, or is it one of the things that we should be celebrating? And it's not happening here, because I think the NHS get a lot of stick, but I think in many ways, the government have used NHS in Wales as an example. Or if you live in Wales, you're going to die. Basically, but actually there are things that they're doing which are working, and actually NHS England could learn from.
And without wanting to sound too crazy, I think there is this narrative which is working around us all, working against the NHS rather than celebrating it.
Well, great points there, guys. Thank you very much. Again, we're taking a quick break now, but when we come back, we'll take a look at what's making the news in the national newspapers. See you shortly. That's great, thanks. Welcome back to the press bit. With me tonight are Dave Evans from Shoot from the Hip Productions and Gareth Jones from Welsh Ice. Welcome back, guys. Now, many of you may use aspirin to cure headaches or everyday aches and pains, but researchers at Cardiff University have now found that the everyday pill can be used to help cure cancer. It's been linked to faster recovery by helping reduce the risk of the disease. Sean Angel reports.
Scientists at Cardiff Uni are saying aspirin could increase cancer survival rates by up to 20%.
About 10 years ago, there was growing evidence that it reduced the risk of cancer. So this very simple, readily available molecule reduces the risk of heart attacks and the risk of cancer. And there have been a whole series of studies showing that the risk of developing cancer is substantially reduced if a small dose, that's another benefit, a small dose of aspirin is taken each day. Now, that was the prevention of cancer, and that is fairly well acknowledged across the world. But there were hints that it might also be of value in the treatment of cancer. And so about 2 years ago, we started a fairly major study putting together all the evidence published in medical journals on aspirin taken by patients with cancer. And we have just published very recently a study putting together 47 studies across the world showing that a small dose of aspirin taken in addition to other treatments increases survival and reduces the spread of cancer.
So when you say a small daily dose, do you mean just taking it as you would as a painkiller? Could it be that easy?
No, it's very much less than a painkiller. There used to be pediatric childhood aspirin, which is about 75 milligrams. The ordinary tablet for a headache is 300 milligrams, and the advice usually is take 2 aspirin. Well, this is a very small dose. The pediatric, the childhood aspirin at about 75 milligrams, and that each day has this beneficial effect in reducing heart attacks and in reducing cancer and benefiting the treatment of cancer.
So aspirin there at Cardiff University as well. I mean, this is a good amount of research to be held here, surely.
I think it's you know, it's unpopular to praise Welsh work, but we should be proud of how many of these cancer breakthroughs are coming out of Cardiff University.
Yeah, just generally about the research that's going on in Cardiff University and you know its importance worldwide, really.
Mm. That's the best thing about it as well, isn't it? It's coming from Wales, which is a great coup for the city as well. Yeah. So moving on now, our first story of the section, we've got the golden nugget, the £50,000 worth of gold that's washed up in North Wales.
Wow.
So I mean, how lucky can you be?
As the honorary North Walian on the panel, I've got to say I always had faith in him. I knew he'd come good.
Did you know him?
He's been putting years in though.
39 years he's been doing this.
Yeah, so I'm going up north this weekend. I've got my nets.
You might have to wait another 40 years though, I mean. You've got to put a lot of work in.
Well, not that lucky if you've been looking for 39 years.
It's less than minimum wage.
Yeah, if you work it out, you know, pound for pound, it's probably, you'd be better off stacking shelves in Tesco. But great, I could do with £50,000 at this point. That would be very nice.
Can't turn it down.
But I would prefer to trip over it on the beach rather than spend 39 years panning for gold. Yeah.
But I mean, this is part of a lot, they reckon, that might still come to North Wales because of a sunken ship that's got all of this bullion on it. I mean, are we likely to see more of this? Are people going to start migrating up to North Wales to get their chance in?
Yeah. I think the good money's in
on the new metro
buying a hotel
line.
On the new metro line to
North Wales Metro.
Yeah.
That's what we'll do next. Yeah.
I mean, it's 72 kilograms they've said, haven't they? But I mean, this is a lot you got to put in, isn't it?
3.4 ounces. What he's saying is the biggest nugget ever found was 72 kilograms.
Then,
so he's got a way to go. Do you think he's going to give up now?
Would you?
I don't know.
Maybe it's all starting to come in now.
Yeah. Well, another lucky guy that's making the news this week as well. We've got here in front of me is the Sun, which is page 24. It's this little piece here. So a man has apparently had his life saved thanks to cake. A biker was sent flying off his motorbike in a crash. And but he was saved, he reckons, because he had a ginger cake in his rucksack.
I think.
But yeah, so
is this real?
Yeah,
is this real? So this is just made it.
I think this story.
There's no newspaper story. You're just making
this guy still fractured his spine and pelvis, but he reckons that it would have been a lot worse if he hadn't landed on his cake.
I think the cake is a lie in the story. I think,
has he got a name, this guy?
Yeah, Rhys Jeffries he's called.
Oh, Rhys, is he like a bit Welsh?
Oh, so hang on a minute. So what if he broke his spine, what did the cake actually do?
Well, his mum can take the credit for this one because she was the one that packed his cake as part of his packed lunch.
Okay, he doesn't sound like a lucky guy to me.
No, I mean, he came home and told his mum it was completely squashed, but I mean, at least it maybe saved his life.
Did some reporter like hanging around accident and emergency looking for this story?
Maybe he was a fan of the Jamaican cake or whatever, seeking it out.
I mean, that's the worst bit, is he didn't have the cake.
Yeah, I mean, it was completely squashed. I don't reckon they could eat it after, even as a commiserations in hospital. I mean...
Yeah, I can't see a lot of bikers stuffing a bit of Jamaica ginger cake on the back of their trousers.
I've got a feeling they're going to sell a lot more Jamaican ginger cake.
After this, maybe it's a
It's always
publicity
interesting,
stunt.
these sorts of stories. So where are these stories originating from? And maybe you follow the money back, and it's the company, the well-known company producing Jamaica ginger cake.
Maybe it'll be repackaged as a safety device now for bikers everywhere.
Who knows?
Right, moving on now to the Admiral Boss, the famous Admiral Boss, huge, obviously, business here in Wales. He's stepping down now. I mean, this is something that's created tons and tons of jobs here in Wales and across the UK. And he's also been involved in an awful lot of charity work and things as well. Recently, he helped try and save a Scouts group's local home and things like that. So he seems someone that's very much involved with the wider community as well.
They've helped transform the economy of Cardiff. It's incredible with the influence like one company has had really on the city, and they're a positive addition to the city. They do a lot of things kind of with charity and with the community. They provide an enormous number of jobs. They appear to be very good ethical employees. I understand like the new building has won some award for its user friendliness. There's a lot to admire about Henry Englehart. I think there's a couple of things. The character, when you first walk in that building, the way they've got these funny kind of awards for everyone who's part of the community, it makes you feel like it's a really great place to work, and they're always in the top 5 places to work.
Yeah, they are always. And recently he gave most of his staff a big bonus as well. I mean, great person to work for.
But the other thing which I think has been really key, and it's something which I don't know if it's recognised too much, every time he says about his success, and he doesn't step out into the spotlight too often, but every time he talks about it, he talks about the importance of his wife's work, being there for him
very much
throughout
a partnership, aren't they?
And I think that's something which is really admirable about his career, because it wasn't just about him. He needs to have a team around him. Yeah,
I hope him leaving doesn't have a negative impact on the company. I'm sure it won't. They're very well established here, and certainly if they weren't here, it's very difficult to imagine Cardiff without them. Actually,
well, it was apparently almost based in Brighton as well. It was very, very close to not being in Wales, but I think it's become central part of it now as well.
Yeah, we have to hope now he sticks around here and he starts working with other young entrepreneurs and gives his time, because I think the downside is he's from Chicago originally, and the Chicago Cubs are having a good start to the baseball season, so let's just hope their form tanks and he sticks around here.
Stays with the reputation of the company. Right, moving on now to the South Wales Echo, page 6 there, and it's also in the Western Mail, page 10. Now this is Stephen Doherty's prison apology. So he's been doing Prime Minister's questions, trying to get the prisons officer to apologise to a Cardiff family after they were rung up and told that their son had died in prison, and then called again half an hour later to say, oh, sorry, we got it wrong. He's not. How are these mistakes still being made?
This is a really tough one. This is human error, and whilst it's a huge, I mean, can you imagine getting that second call after you've started calling the family? But do you think it would make up for the first call almost? Like, would you just not care that you had the first call? No, you'd be devastated. You'd be absolutely devastated.
There's no excuse for it, but it is kind of human error.
Yeah, can you really account for these kind of things?
I'm kind of interested about like who's giving the story to the press. So is Stephen Doherty giving this to the press in order to tell us what a great guy he is? Because it's kind of the sort of thing that you think is the bread and butter of a constituency MP's work, to do this sort of thing. But somewhere along the line in his office has decided that this is a story that needs to be
mentioned
given
it
to the press.
in Prime Minister's questions. That was the thing.
I think the balance of that is that we often say that the politicians don't do enough.
This is a specific person he's trying to care about here.
Yeah. But what is it that they want at the end? Do they want what is it that they want out of this? Do they want that prison officer, who's probably part of an institutional error, to get on TV or to meet with a person and make that apology?
Well, I mean that's what he's asking for. So you never know, do you? Well, thank you very much there, guys. That's it for Press Pit this week. My thanks to Dave and Gareth for joining me there, guys. And thank you for you at home as well for watching. Cardiff's Local News is next, and the Press Pit will be back next week.